right, ladies and gentlemen, the class has commenced. We finish up the 1930s. Yesterday, we got through the legacy of FDR. I think we got almost all the way through it anyway. We did talk about fireside chats, right? This, I believe, is way more important than just like one line in your notes. Hey, he had these fireside chats. If you think about what happened after the crash and how America was like knocked off its feet, like this shock of all the prosperity of the 20s coming to a crashing halt, right? And then the things that we said Hoover tried to do while maintaining the traditional idea of liberty and freedom in America, but knowing that the government had to do something, and they didn't work. We get 3 years later, there's an election. Hoover, you're out, dude. You were president when this happened, and now you've had 3 years to fix it. You haven't fixed it, you're out. So now FDR comes in, promising a new deal, right? Happy days are here again. And he also uses radio, this new medium that people have that comes right into their living room. The president of the United States can speak to them periodically as if he's right there with them. And he uses this as he's implementing his New Deal programs. 1933, still in the Depression. 1934, still in the Depression. 1935, still in the Depression. Election of 1936. FDR, you're out. No, he's not. We're still in this economic malaise. Things haven't gotten much better for a lot of people, yet he gets reelected. He did not get sent out on his ear like Hoover did. I think this is a big part of it. His popularity, his connection, his ability to communicate with people, not just having the radio, but having that. Have you ever heard of something called the it factor? Some people call it charisma. There's something about some people that just makes people more drawn to them, to like them better, whatever it is. Like, you can, to make a sports analogy, you can have two people that are like equally talented. They do, but one's got it. I don't know. They just end up winning. Like, there's people that throw the ball better than Tom Brady. There's people that obviously run the ball better than Tom Brady. There's people that do a whole lot of things better than Tom Brady. But guess what? Obviously, he's got it. He won the most Super Bowls. It's weird. He's definitely not the best passer, runner. Probably not even the best reader of defenses, came down to it, but he wins. It's weird. He got it. So what did FDR have over Hoover? It. What is it? The New Deal, we said, was a pivotal time. Not only was the New Deal a pivotal time, I think this is where we left off, right? This last thing you have? This can't be overstated. This is a pivotal time. From the Civil War up until 1936, the Republican Party could count on the black vote. Now, the black population was even lower than it is today. Today, it's like 16% of our population. Back then, it was a little lower. But if you were guaranteed the majority, an overwhelming majority of that group of people, that's a pretty good base of votes you're getting, right? From 1932 to 1936, those 4 years, blacks started voting for Democrats, and the Democrats have counted on and used that demographic for the last 90 years to allow them to win a lot of close elections. It went from 76% that in up to 2012, the Democratic candidate for president can count on 90+% of the black vote. There's been a trend lately where, even though it's not very significant, but a small trend lately, 2016, 2020, that more and more black people are like, wait, like there's this common idea that whether you believe it or not, or if it's right or wrong, there's this common idea out there propagated by education and media and government that black people are still kept down. Well, if that's the case, then they're going to vote for the people that promise to help them, right? And that's been kind of the Democrat Party. Well, now in the last 2 election cycles, and I think some of this has to do with social media, because you have some pretty prominent younger black people that are becoming popular amongst young people and they're trying to get people to open their eyes and say, we've been supporting this one particular party. We're saying that our plight as black Americans is still not on par with white Americans. And we've been supporting this one particular party for 100 years, and we're still saying we're in the same boat. Isn't it time we figured it out and maybe tried the other party again? So only time will tell in the next 20 years or so if that tide continues to change and go the other way again. But right now, very significant advantage for the Democrat Party in America, because the shift started right there in the midst of the Depression. So the lasting debate is this, and I've given you the curriculum here at Heartland Christian from Bob Jones University, presents the case that at least getting you to realize that, come on, it isn't so simple as Herbert Hoover did nothing and FDR is a heroic savior. The facts don't bear that out. Herbert Hoover tried a lot of things that were controversial at that time. Should the government get that involved? They're not controversial now because we're used to that government involvement. FDR did a lot of things beyond what Hoover did, and they were controversial. And guess what? The Supreme Court threw them out because they were too much government. But even with all the efforts of FDR, did the Depression end in 1936? No. Did the Depression end in 1937? No. In fact, we look back and we say, whoa, there was a pretty sharp decline. Even in the midst of the Depression, things got a lot worse in 1937. Did it end in 1938? No. So, again, there's this common, and you'll hopefully remember what I told you in 2 or 3 years when you're in this college class, and FDR is propped up as the hero, and Hoover is besmirched as, didn't care, didn't do anything. Hoovervilles, Hoover tents, Hoover blankets. Okay, so we end with, what else was happening in the 30s? Now that we've gone through the stock market crash, Herbert Hoover's reaction, FDR's reaction, how the country followed FDR through 4 different elections, even if there wasn't the success of getting out of the Depression. Was there anything else going on in the 1930s? Some of these things you have heard of. I think most of them you heard of. And we're just kind of highlighting the other significant events that happened in America in the 30s. Like bullet point list here. Ready? First one. You've probably heard of this. Yes? What is the Dust Bowl? Yeah, say it.
It's like a lot of farms in like Oklahoma and like
In the plains.
in the west, in
Yeah.
the plains. They had a drought, and then the drought caused like earth to be like not being where we farmed, and
Right.
like a lot of dust and stuff like that covered
A lot.
everything, and
We're going to show pictures. A lot, right? It was a combination of drought, and then, again, it's one of those things where history is a great teacher. Farmers that were not practicing what we would consider very wise use of their land, right? So their land was being dried out because they weren't being as efficient with their land as possible. Combine that with the drought, combine that with windstorms, and you get scenes like this. This is actual picture coming up. Imagine looking at this outside your window. I don't know. I might think, well, this is it. This is the end. Like, does that not look apocalyptic? Like, this is the end of, this is end times.
I'm
This-
sorry, but like, that's an apocalypse.
Yeah, that's an actual photo, Jonathan, of the dust storm coming up across the farmland over these houses. And then when it settles, if you can imagine how tall those wheels are on the equipment, that the land's just totally submerged in this dust. So you had 1920s. Remember we talked about the farming industry was already in trouble. The prices of crops were already going down. Then the stock market crash hits. Now we're in a depression. So the farmers were already facing problems. They got the crisis of the depression. And now on top of that, they're getting their land just totally destroyed throughout the Central Plains. A lot of this is Oklahoma. And if you know of not the VeggieTales, but the actual author of the book, John Steinbeck's books, the book, The Grapes of Wrath. Anybody ever read that? I think I might have mentioned that in here before. It's a good novel, fictional story based on the truth of what happened to these people in the 1930s. And it led to a major exodus from this part of the country to the West. And I think it's in Grapes of Wrath where you'll see the phrase California, a land flowing with milk and honey. And we showed you the electoral map of 1932 and how California only had 22 electoral votes. What? Ohio had more people living in it than California? Well, that's going to change, right? One of the reasons it's going to change is because there's going to be more people going to the West as a result of the Depression and the Dust Bowl that happened. And there's going to be something else that makes them move west that we'll come up on later. Any questions, comments? Pretty devastating images. You probably all heard of this building. It's not very significant to you today, but at one time in America, this was amazing. The Empire State Building, erected in 1931, the tallest building, not just in America, in the world at that time. I think it held the distinction of being the tallest building for into the 70s. I know that, and I'm not sure the exact year, the Sears Tower was built in Chicago, because then that was built higher. I think that was sometime in the mid to late 70s, definitely there in the 80s. And I think the tallest building in the world now is in Dubai or something. Am I right?
Yeah.
So I don't know the name of it. Does anybody know the name of it?
I don't remember.
Yeah. It's in Dubai. But for a long time, through much of the 20th century, 1900s, the Empire State Building was still an incredible engineering feat. Not just a skyscraper, the tallest in the world. And I always think of King Kong when I think of the Empire State. Anybody else? Is there anybody that doesn't even know who King Kong is? Everybody knows who King Kong is, right? So there's that picture of the movie with King Kong hanging on to the Empire State Building, holding Doris Day, grabbing the plane out of the air. Yeah. You all know that we have this thing called the national anthem, right? We say it before sporting events and other activities. Well, it wasn't always our national anthem. It didn't become our national anthem until 1931. There was always the not always, Star Spangled Banner. Dina, I know you're going to remember. Dina, when did the Star Spangled Banner come to be? When was it written? When?
Yeah.
Who wrote it?
The one guy.
You learned this in music. I know you did. Francis Scott Key. When was it? What historical event was taking place? What? Yeah.
No.
War of 1812. No. She didn't say that.
Yeah.
She meant War of 1812. War of 1812, right, Dina?
During war. I don't care.
But it didn't become our national anthem until 1931. And this isn't up there, but we say the Pledge of Allegiance every day, right? and I actually don't know the year that came into being, but I do know that it wasn't until the 50s that, and some anti-religious, anti-Christian people try to bring this up in debate about doing things like saying the pledge to start your day is, right there in the middle of the pledge, we say, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible. Well, it was one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And it wasn't until 55 or 57 that they put under God in there. So some people, well, it wasn't even in there until 1950s. So people don't like to get in arguments about whether we should be paying homage to country or God in schools. We use that argument. 21st Amendment, 1933. Remember the 18th Amendment bringing prohibition into being, and throughout the 20s, all of the excitement or murder that happened because of the prohibition, they went through all that, and they finally repealed it in 1933. Of course, it took another amendment to the Constitution to say, okay, everything we said about the 18th Amendment, about the distribution, sale, manufacture of alcohol, that is no longer, and basically then it would go back to being a state issue instead of a national issue. Does that make sense? In this federalist system that we live in, that the republic, that the Constitution created, that instead of the prohibition being a national issue, it goes down to a state and local issue. So now, if a state decides that they want to outlaw alcohol, they could. And then from the state level, it goes down to the county level. Certain counties can be, quote unquote, what do you call it if there's no alcohol sold there? 3-letter word. A county, and then even a city, a municipality can be dry. That's what it's called. So instead of being a national thing, like you're not allowed, counties can pass laws that says you're not. Cities can pass laws that say you're not allowed. Cities can give what are called licenses to establishments to be able to serve alcohol. I think I might have told you this before, but it happens every few years, but I don't know how many years ago it was. Maybe Mrs. Tosh remembers, but somebody coming around my neighborhood and I'm one of those that I've seen enough of the ravages and destruction to family and lives that alcohol can do in my youth. So I'm anti-alcohol. I'm not saying that. I know that anything you do in moderation. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I've never drank a beer before in my life. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to act like that. But I'm saying that what alcohol can do to people and families. So I'm basically against it. So I would rather that there wasn't any, ever. But when they came around with the petition, like I think it might have been for Giant Eagle, so I don't know when they started doing it, but to put it on the ballot. So like in Salem, it had to go on the ballot. Should Giant Eagle be able to sell, maybe it was just a specific type of alcohol or something. So instead of being a national law, it got put back where it really should be. Like where a lot of laws should be, at the state level. The power of the national government was never meant to be what we've turned it into. Here's something that's significant for America, maybe not in 1934. We're concerned about our own economic problems, but guess what's happening across the pond? In Germany, there is this political figure rising. And actually, part of his ascension is due to the Great Depression. Adolf Hitler starts to become more and more popular as he gains more and more following because he's a great orator. Yes, David? Yeah, he was a great speaker, powerful speaker. Had to make up for his less than powerful physical being, right? Wasn't a very big man. He probably suffered from little man's syndrome, huh? Right, so you guys know what that is. Never heard of that. So did I tell you you're taller than me at that age? Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, Hitler. Hitler's on the rise. And the Great Depression that we told you wasn't just in America, it was worldwide, gives him more fuel as he tells the German people, look what they've done to us. We're still paying for World War I, and now the Great Depression, and all of these industrialists and bankers, and what specific group of people are pretty populous in the banking industry. He could say the bankers, the Jews, are the roots of everything that ails Germany, and he rallies Germany to be united. And one of the ways he does it is A, because he's a good speaker, and two, because he's actually doing a lot of good things for Germany. In the midst of this depression and inflation and all the things that were happening, he was fixing those things. He was building schools and hospitals, and what a great guy this is. So if you've ever wondered how'd that happen, how did so many people not know what Hitler was up to? How did they go along with killing 6 million Jews? No, not necessarily. But they went along with Hitler because he was for Germany. He was doing a lot of great things for Germany. So when you would start hearing rumors about these other things he was doing, no, that can't be. That's a conspiracy theory. Right? Can you imagine? That's what it would have been like. If you first started hearing the news about what was going on in the Holocaust, you probably would have thought that's conspiracy theory. There's no way that's true. There's so much more I could say about that related to today's world, but I won't. Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam was built in 1936. Anybody ever been there? You walk across it?
Yeah.
Nice. I do want to go someday. Because here we are, almost 90 years later, and still pretty significant marvel that they were able to construct this thing back in the 1930s. In fact, the video is going to even say it's regarded by some as the 8th wonder of the world.
The water level is like really low.
And the water level now is low. Must be because of global climate change. That's what caused the dust storms too. You know, I forgot to mention that. Had to be climate change to cause the drought and the dust bowl. Had to be. Wait, 1930s. Oh, well, anyway. What am I looking for? Hoover Dam?
Right smack on the Arizona-Nevada border. Since
Lights,
the
please.
so-called 8th wonder of the world. Completed nearly 80 years ago, the mighty Hoover Dam is as much an engineering marvel today as it was when it opened back in 1935. Now, you see what I'm talking about in just a minute. First, let me fill you in as to why it was made. You see, the mighty Colorado River is crazy powerful and wildly unpredictable. Every spring, the raging river would break through its floodbanks and just like destroy homes, farms, and even entire cities. Now, when the water receded, more problems. Widespread, devastating drought plagued the region. Enter the U.S. Department of Reclamation. Their conclusion? That the river had to be regulated. Though how on earth do you regulate a river? I mean, that just seems like an impossible task, right? But Congress approved the project, and listen here, President Herbert Hoover signed the appropriation bill. In an unprecedented move, 6 construction firms joined forces to win the massive government contract. They were given 7 years.
Is it just me, or was there like a hint of like the way he hesitated? It was like, I'm about to tell you something like positive about Herbert Hoover. Maybe it's just me. I'm paranoid about it.
Complete the process, and a warning: heavy fines would be imposed for each and every single day that construction went beyond schedule. So,
Don't you wish it was like that today when they're doing like road construction? Hey, this is the time frame you have to get it done. If you don't get it done in that time, there's a fine every day you don't get it done. Hoover, the legislation said, here's the money, here's your task. You don't get it done in 7 years, you're paying for not getting it done in 7 years.
began the race against time, and men literally worked around the clock to try to do the impossible. One thing, however, was going their way. It was the height of the Great Depression, and there was no lack of an eager workforce. But excessive heat and extreme engineering challenges put the project in constant risk. First task at hand, diverting the mighty Colorado away from the dam construction. Now, again, how on earth do you divert a river? Well, check this out. 4 diversion tunnels were drilled into the base of the solid rock canyon, 2 on each side. It took about 13 months to blast out 1.5 million cubic yards of rock. Teams of acrobats, known as high scalers, some actual circus performers from nearby Las Vegas, risked their lives to blast and free loose rock from the canyon walls. Monster pipes, more than 30 feet in diameter, were custom fabricated in makeshift factories built right near the site. Railroad cars delivered mountains of concrete. A unique aerial pulley system lowered the mixture into place. Each bucket held 16 tons. Times that by about 5 million, Hoover Dam starts to rise. Generators and massive hydroelectric units were built right in its center. The world had never seen anything like it. The dam is as high as a 60-story building, and its base is as thick as 2 football fields. It can withstand up to 45,000 pounds of water pressure per cubic square foot. Now, if that sounds kind of out there, trust me, it's just a lot. The amount of concrete used in construction of this one dam is, well, about enough to pave a road from New York City to San Francisco, California. Even more impressive, the fact that the project literally paid for itself. To this day, Hoover Dam remains one of the country's largest hydroelectric power plants, generating clean, renewable energy for several western states. The dam even powers a good portion of the neon lights on the Las Vegas Strip. Right from the start, the dam was an instant tourist attraction. People from all over the world came to see the modern marvel in the Arizona-Nevada desert. It became a symbol of the power and ingenuity of American industry, and a tribute to the work of more than 21,000 men that helped build it.
Pretty cool. By the way, that's also going to add to the movement, the migration of American people to the West. Why? How are you going to have hundreds of thousands or millions of people living in the middle of the desert? From Nevada to Arizona to the eastern part, to the central part of California, it's desert, the Mojave Desert. You can't live there unless you have water for life, right? So this dam leads to further migration and increase in the population in the states out west, because before that, how that part of the world, that part of the country couldn't even withstand higher population. And today, in places like California, there's a constant study of and economic and political debate about, okay, how do we ensure that we continue the water supply? Because someone said when they were there, the water level was pretty low. So how do we ensure that the water continues to be able to supply a place like Las Vegas and Los Angeles, San Francisco, all those places in California? All right. Any questions, comments? Ladies did you walk across the dam?
Yeah.
Did you look over the rail?
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting nervous, dizzy, just thinking about looking over the
I
rail?
don't like heights, so it's
Yeah,
scary.
me either. I would have been very afraid. finishing up. The Hindenburg. How many have heard of the Hindenburg? You probably don't remember. Actually, someone this morning did. That one of our little speed reading exercises we spent a little extra time on in 5th grade was about, they were talking about what we used to think caused the explosion of the Hindenburg, and then they found out that it wasn't, it like brushed against something, or static electricity, or the hydrogen, the flammability of the gas. So the Hindenburg is a blimp. A blimp is a dirigible. You never heard of that word before? We usually just call it a blimp, right? Or if you're a fan of 70s music, another word for a blimp might be a lead Zeppelin. So it's a Zepp, because Germans would make them and they'd call them Zeppelins. So Zeppelin, dirigible, blimp. The Hindenburg, the infamous, why is this part of American history? Because this was another major event that happened in America in the 30s, 1937, and tragic, very tragic. And this is incredible because in other years when I've taught other levels and other places, I don't know when they loaded this video. I didn't even check, but this is actual footage of the actual Hindenburg going up in flames.
Some vegan meat companies got
I wonder how much money this guy got for his video to have actual footage.
The ill-fated Hindenburg on her last flight sails over New York. These pictures, made from a Pathé News plane less than 4 hours before the tragedy, show the world's largest airship heading for Lakehurst, New Jersey. Over Newark's famous Woman Skyway, the airship was hailed by thousands who little dreamed it was their final glimpse of the Hindenburg. Inside the silver envelope are 16 separate gas bags, each filled with hydrogen, a highly inflammable gas.
Yeah.
From the ground, you can see the forward control cabin from which the ship is operated. The windows along the side indicate the location of the passengers' quarters, in which many were carried to.
Look, in the 1930s, the symbol of the swastika was the symbol of the Nazi Socialist Party, the Nazis, right? The National Socialist Party of Germany. The swastika wasn't seen as it is today. We look back and we see what happened as a result of Hitler's rise and the Nazis, and we see it as pure evil, which we should. But so you're seeing this blimp, this Hindenburg, just flying over New York City with the swastika on it. You're like, what? Well, they didn't know, right?
To a flaming death. Approaching Lakehurst, the Hindenburg appeared a conquering giant of the sky, but she proved a puny plaything in the mighty grip of fate. It almost seemed as if fate had set the stage for the horrible tragedy. A graceful craft sailing serenely to her doom. For 3 hours, the dirigible circled the landing field at Lakehurst, New Jersey, dumping more water ballast than ever before in vain efforts to level off.
Kind of like how submarines work, right? You got these ballasts filled with water and they sink, they let the water out, they rise, trying to keep everything balanced.
Again, she dumps ballast, and a nervous tension grips those who are watching, for this is something unusual. There goes more ballast, but the tail is settling in spite of all that has been dumped.
I wonder if someone went to a garage sale and they found this video. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Finally, the landing lines are dropped. These scenes were filmed by Pathé News cameraman William Deep, and you're about to see the pictures he got when the ship exploded. Those aboard leaping for life from a flaming inferno, the actual crash of the Hindenburg, an airship destroyed in less than half a minute.
There was almost 100 people aboard. Only 35 died. That's amazing. See the people running? If you look at the bottom of the screen. Some people got up. Imagine you're one of those survivors looking back and seeing like you
Rushing
just
to the
escaped
rescue,
that.
the heroes of the tragedy dash in, heedless of danger to help the injured to safety, while others, beyond help, perish in the flames. The blazing aftermath reveals the extent of the disaster, an inferno which became a flaming tomb, a twisted mass of girders, the seared and scorched skeleton of what was once a mighty airship.
That's basically it. He's just going to keep filming all the fire and such. Comments, questions? We'll start tomorrow with the end. There's only a few more things to put there. We'll have our Franken crossword. If school gets disrupted the end of the week and you have everything you're supposed to have, then we will have to have the test beginning of next week. So keep that in mind. I haven't checked lately. Anybody check the latest? Are we down to like a coating to an inch?
No, I think it's bad.
Getting worse?
I think we're going to miss Thursday and Friday.
Let's go.
Okay, it's all going to freeze.
Mm.
It's like an ice storm. It's a cat.
We already.
Beat the Braves! Beat the Braves!
Hey, I think it's due today, so just bring your English.
Who's that? That means
Bien.
Can you draw the square?
No.
The square. Wait, the Rams beat the 49ers?
Dude,
I'm paying
you're like, what happened? You're usually up on things.
I don't know.
Huh?
Still,